Former Fox News host and Trump-supporting political commentator Megyn Kelly is publicly panicking and sounding the alarm about the disastrous state of the Trump campaign, referring to new evidence which shows Vice President Harris not only winning the 2024 election, but actually shrinking Donald Trump's strongest advantages. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have a clip or two to play in this video. We're going to start with this one here. This is from the most recent episode of the Megyn Kelly show. Megyn Kelly, of course, formerly of Fox News. She is someone, I should say, that when she was on Fox and when she tried her hand at being a kind of a mainstream establishment journalist, yes, she was conservative. Yes, she graded Republicans on a curve, but she was more than capable of holding them to task. She famously pissed off Trump after she moderated a debate in 2016. They had a public feud. Since then, she has gone crazier and full on MAGA, but even occasionally she will criticize Donald Trump. So she's not the most MAGA of MAGA conservatives, even though she's made it abundantly clear that she enthusiastically supports him. As a matter of fact, she thinks that if he doesn't win the election, it could be the end of the country as we know it. That's how deep she is in her support of Trump. Well, she wants him to win. And unlike a lot of MAGA Republicans, that means recognizing that there are problems when those problems exist and trying to solve them. She recognizes that Donald Trump has some serious problems in this campaign and is sounding the alarm about them. So we're going to play this clip and unpack it together.
But in terms of what the candidate can do to help himself, getting out there, doing media and doing it in a competent way, the way that J.D. Vance largely did last night, is the very best thing that Trump could do to help himself in this race. And I don't know that he actually advances the ball by turning down an opportunity like this, especially because they're going to spin it.
You may be
and
right.
You know they're going to spin it.
And she's going to do it. So now she's got control of the show and he's not in there. And here's, this is not an encouraging report. I mean, it shows it very tight, and you can make the argument that when it's tight, that's a Trump lead, right? That we've heard that, at least at the national level. The experts are saying that doesn't really necessarily apply at the swing state level, but on the national popular vote, a tie goes to Trump, you know, because all these others who like in 16, Hillary Clinton was up going into that election in the national vote. And yes, she did win the popular vote, but not by as much. Anyway, the secret Trump vote has to be factored in, and we'll find out whether that's still a thing. But listen to some of these numbers. They report Trump continues to lead on the economy, but his advantage on inflation has disappeared. He did have a 6-point lead in August over her, 48 to 42. Now it's evenly divided, 47 to 47, on who they trust more to handle the issue that 60% of swing state voters say is the aspect of the economy that concerns them the most. They care most about inflation, and they're evenly split now on that issue. They say there's a few explanations for it. The first is that Harris's message on the economy has broken through. Another is that Trump's attempt to link her to Bidenomics, I mentioned this earlier, has not been as effective as the Republicans had hoped. And they go on to talk about how even Trump's best issue, immigration, he's still winning on it. He has his largest lead over her there, 51 to 42. But that's a 5-point drop from where he was over Harris in August. And guys, what this tells me is that her inanity over, I'm going to issue price controls and I'm going to give all first-time home buyers $25,000. And trust me, that's not going to drive up the price of homes for people who aren't first-time home buyers who are competing against those same people in the market, is working. It's working. She's somehow getting through on it. So maybe these guys are right, Matt, that he should go out there on 60 Minutes and at least try to counter some of this.
So, yeah, you can see the tangible frustration. Again, credit where it's due. Megyn Kelly is not stupid, right? I think she is almost hopelessly partisan in the worst possible way. She is entangled in niche culture war issues. Bill Maher, with whom she has had a very cordial civil relationship, and someone who is also susceptible to being entangled in niche culture war issues, which don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Even he called her out for it. Like, man, you are way too lost in the weeds, caring about stuff that is inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, and overlooking even more pertinent issues. You're stepping over a dollar for the sake of a nickel. That's what MAGA conservatives tend to do. But again, she wants Trump to win. And because she wants Trump to win, she's being honest. She's like, okay, Trump can't win if he loses. He's going to lose if there are a number of problems with his campaign. So we need to remove the problems in his campaign. And first, that requires recognizing that there are problems with his campaign. So again, I want Trump to lose, but as a student of political science, it's good that she's doing what she's doing. The first step in solving a problem is recognizing that there's a problem in the first place. And unfortunately for Megyn Kelly, unfortunately for the rest of us, MAGA Republicans are just predisposed as a general principle to not recognize that there's a problem when there is one, because it's a cult for the most part. And this is part of the reason why, even though Megyn Kelly is very much in the Trump camp, why she still gets a lot of pushback from people, because she still will occasionally, and increasingly less likely, but still occasionally, criticize the cult leader himself. So let's talk about this. Again, I want to be very clear. I want to be so freaking clear, guys. Donald Trump can still win this election. This is not a blowout. There are no indicators that it's going to be a blowout. Hopefully it will be. Hopefully there is a secret Kamala vote, a secret Democrat vote, where we just turn out and give the Democrats a popular mandate, a final brutal repudiation of the MAGA Republican Party, where they lose by, 20 million votes. And it's an electoral college sweep. Hopefully that's what happens, but there are no signs of that. However, the current indicators suggest that you'd just rather be Kamala Harris than Donald Trump as we approach the election. She's beating him on fundraising. She's beating him on head-to-head polls. She's tied or beating him in most of the swing states. She's in the better position. Not so far that she can't lose it, but it's true. I just want to really emphasize that before we go into more detail. The Silver Bulletin, which is the new enterprise by Nate Silver, formerly of 538, is probably the most famous election forecaster in the country. He says that in his election models, in his aggregation, Vice President Harris leads by about 3.4 points on national polling average, and she has a 57% chance of winning the Electoral College. So she is the slight, but solid lead in the Electoral College. 538 has Vice President Harris up. Oh man, I lost the chart. There was a chart here, but she is ahead also in the national polls. You look +7, +1, +12, +3, +3, +2. I mean, you have to go down to some pretty dubious polling. And of course, this is also like Nebraska, for example. Nebraska, Trump is up by 11, but you have to get into the weeds to find one where Trump has a decisive advantage at the national level. Generally speaking, Vice President Harris is dominating. There's recent Republican polls suggesting that he's within the margin of error in Florida. Florida was supposed to be a red bastion. Ron DeSantis, the Republican governor of Florida, who served Trump loyally, cultishly, freakishly, then tried to compete against him in the Republican primary, but didn't differentiate himself enough because he tried to have a foot in both worlds where, I want to compete against him, but also I still want to be obsequious. Well, he brags all the time about turning Florida into a Republican stronghold. And indeed he did. He won legitimate victories and then used that power in typical Republican ways to exacerbate institutional advantages, such that Florida, which used to be a purple state, is pretty decisively red. But now Trump is in the margin of error, according to multiple polls. And I should also say that there's going to be a ballot initiative on the upcoming Florida ballot about a constitutional amendment to the right to an abortion, which will also likely increase Democratic and independent left-leaning voter turnout, which could cost Trump Florida, to say nothing of the fact that, of course, he's wildly unpopular. Also, going back to what Megyn Kelly was saying in her recent polls, on that panel, is that recent polls, which we've talked about this, have shown that Vice President Harris is gaining ground in two of Trump's strongest areas, or the two strongest areas for Trump, which is the economy and immigration. Karl Rove, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor who used to work with Megyn Kelly. We've talked about this in previous videos. He is also sounding the alarm. He's bringing out the whiteboard and saying, hey, listen, the vice president has effectively cut his lead in half on these two issues. He is hemorrhaging on this issue. His lead is shrinking. It's still there, at least for the moment, and it may stay there. And he may actually reverse the tide on this. It's possible. But she is gaining on him in his strongest area, whereas he is not gaining on her in her strongest areas, to say nothing of the fact that she dominates him in character attributes, in notions of honesty, integrity, intelligence, competence, whether you like it or not. Donald Trump is never going to be seen as mentally or physically fit as vice president, as competent as Vice President Harris in terms of the polling or anything else. So he has to maintain his edge on these policy issues, which I would argue are unjustified in the first place, but they are there. And he's losing on those issues, or rather he's hemorrhaging on these issues, and he's at risk of losing. And Politico's talked about this as well, that with respect to women, which is the most reliable voting bloc, which is the biggest voting bloc in terms of the two genders, she's winning on the economy. And The Guardian was recently reporting on this as well, that there was a poll that they conducted, and this is not the only poll of its like, that shows that the vice president's policy proposals are more popular than Donald Trump's, 4 out of 5. It's not exactly surprising, right? Republicans have an unearned advantage in reputation on the economy. But if you actually just take Republican and Democrat out of it and you just line up their policy proposals, hey, what would you do about the economy? Democratic policy proposals are almost always more popular than Republican policies. What do Republicans want to do about the economy? Cut taxes for the rich and deregulate. Most people don't want that. They want regulation, at least common sense regulation, where, private businesses can't just do whatever the hell they want, right? And most people do not want taxes cut for the rich. They recognize that the tax burden should be much more on the rich than middle and lower classes. Republicans don't feel that way, but that's their major economic policy proposal, right? Of course this makes sense. So again, I am not saying that by the time of the election that Harris will be leading on the economy or immigration. As a matter of fact, I think that we should temper our expectations and just be very pleasantly surprised that she has closed the gap as much as she has on these two issues, given the various institutional, decades-long advantages that Republicans have enjoyed in perception on this issue. But I think Megyn Kelly is right. The Trump campaign should be scared. They should be intimidated. They should be panicking about this. And they should be, if you wanted Trump to win, working overtime to try to maximize that lead, to try to stem the flow, right? No longer hemorrhage on immigration and the economy. Unfortunately, I think they just have a uniquely unpopular and likable candidate. So Donald Trump canceled the 60 Minutes interview because he is cognitively impaired, because he is low energy. He's constantly slurring. He's unable to articulate a comprehensive, substantive, direct policy proposal. He goes off on wild tangents and conspiracy theories. And I think that's why he's backing away from these media appearances, especially after the trauma he endured when Vice President Harris kicked his ass in their first and perhaps only debate. So I don't know what they need to do, but I'm glad that they're floundering. So I suppose I shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Anyway, fun to bask in the panic of Megyn Kelly and other MAGA Republicans. It's a nice change of pace. In the meantime, of course, let me know what you think in the comments.